All right. Can everybody see my JD Edwards login screen right now?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So I did, if there is anybody on this call that was forwarded the meeting invite, you may not have access to this E1 PY environment. If that's the case, and after you exit this call and you need to get in for any reason, please let me know. It is a special role that we have to apply to individuals because we don't want everybody updating pricing. So your manager does have to approve you to get this particular role. If it is a case where you are going to be updating pricing and we didn't give you access for whatever reason, it's nothing that's difficult that we can't get done in time, but I just want to make sure that we are aware that not everybody's going to be able to do this. Everybody can view it, but not actually change the pricing. So once we're going to go ahead and do all of this right now in our what's called PY, which is basically the staging environment. This is the one that everybody has access to. You also have access to the production environment, but right now we're not doing the pricing in there, so we don't want you going in and testing. You have the ability to go ahead and enter this PY environment and mess with any of the information that you would like to just for practice or whatever. It won't affect anything. Your user ID is just going to be whatever you use to log in the morning. Typically, it's your first name and the first letter of your last name. If you have a common name, it might be 2 letters of your last name or something like that. Once you enter that, your password is going to be your Windows login that you use every morning as well. Once you log in the first time, it'll ask you if you want to save it, which obviously I've done, so it remembers it for me. Go ahead and sign in. In the normal E1, if you don't go in there often, you will not typically get asked this question. This is only when you're in the testing environment. And you'll want to go ahead and select this JPY 920. For 99% of the people, this is all we're going to see. If you're in IT, you'll see a few more of these. Once you enter the system, most of you have probably seen or at least printed my screenshots in the document that I sent out. You will notice that the screen looks a little bit different. This was a change that was just made a week ago. So I will update all of the screenshots in my document, but it is 99% exactly the same functionality. It's simply a different look and feel on this home page right here. Not everybody will default to open to sales and closing. So if for some reason you open up your screen and it doesn't look exactly like this, if you open up and for some reason yours is showing a different view, it just means that you need to go up to the top and change to sales closing. Once you're in here, in order to update the plan pricing, which is going to include just the plan and elevation, you'll just click right on here on this cost center master for plan pricing. Loading. And then up here on the top, the area, it's typically going to be, for example, if you're Southern California, it's SCH for Southern California homes. Arizona is AZH. If you're not familiar with what yours is, you can click on this little visual assist and it will pull up all the different codes down here. It's a very long list because it starts with all the letters and things like that, but you can start to type in a little bit of a description and then hit the star key. And I failed.
You put a star up behind something.
Okay, I'm going to cheat because I know mine. Most people know theirs. If you don't, that will pull up and it'll tell you SoCal. If it's NoCal, for example, it's going to change to NoCal. So once you do it once, you'll probably know yours. This next one down here under community, this is actually the community cost center. Again, if you do not know your community cost center, you can use the visual assist and you can start to type in and search for a description. And once you see the one that you're looking for, if you click the little radio button, the green check mark is basically the same as saying OK. Click on that and it will put that up there. Once you know your community cost centers, you can also just enter them directly and don't need to search. After you've got that information, click on the magnifying glass, which is your find, and it's just going to confirm that this is indeed the one you want. If you didn't want to type your description up here, you can also leave it blank and search, and it will start to provide you a big long list, but it's going to give you every community that has ever existed in SoCal, which is a long list. This will expand it further. I recommend going with a cost code. Right here, you'll right click on that radio button, or you can also use this row up here at the top. They both do the same thing. It's just user preference as to which one you want to use. And you will select the community plans. This is going to pull up every single one of the plan and elevations that exist for this particular community. Again, this is the production environment that we're going to be playing around in, so if some of the information doesn't look accurate, that's fine. It could have been copied a long time ago. The information that you're going to be updating is the base price. Something to keep in mind with this column that might be different is what you have to do is you update the base price. It is the price of the plan and the elevation. So you'll notice over here you have plan 1A. If that is $666,900, and if you select plan B, if there's a $5,000 premium, then this one is actually going to be $671,900. And the system is smart enough when it sends this information over to Salesforce, it will pull that out for you and say, okay, that's a $5,000 elevation premium. So we still have it called out in Salesforce just like we do today, only in E1 it is actually a combined total. So you will enter it as $671,900. Basically, you'll continue down your list. If there's no updates, you can update one at a time. If none of your pricing is changing except for one particular plan, you update just that one and you can leave the rest of them alone. This column over here is where you're putting your sales price effective date. So if it's Monday and I'm entering pricing that I do not want to be effective until Saturday or Friday night, I can select that date so that I can still put in my pricing just as well, some of you do today. You put it in a day or two early and it's effective for a future release. So entering that date will tell you when that price is effective. It's also going to tell you your previous base price. This is just simply for kind of your own knowledge. It's a column that we don't update, but it tells us what the previous price was. Once you've made all the changes that you need to make on this screen, you must remember to come over and click the OK or the green check mark, because that is the same thing as save. Once you've saved that community, you could continue to do additional communities if you have more of them. But if you want to go ahead and move on to doing the lot premiums, this X mark right here is basically like closing a window or closing a tab in most of our other systems. It will bring us back to our home screen. On this screen is where you're going to find the Lot Master lot pricing. And it follows similar where we're going to say, okay, what is our community cost center? Hit the find button. And it's going to pull up all of my lots for this particular community. Depending on your division, you may be able to sort by phase if you use the phase, or you can find other ways to filter this list. But this is basically where you're going to come in, and again, you can click on one of these, or you can go up and do the row, or right click. Same thing. Go into the lot maintenance. In the lot maintenance screen, what you will want to do is come over here. Most people are going to automatically default to some other grid, is what this is called. I recommend going in and updating it to be pricing updates, because that will pull in all of the fields that pertain to the pricing. If I were to come in and my screen looked something like this, it can be very difficult to scroll and find those fields that I need to update for pricing. We have a lot of fields on here. So this right here will update your grid, and this is a shared grid that the E1 team created for us, so everybody will have access to this particular grid. Once you're in here, this is where you would go ahead and start to update your lot premiums. Same thing as before, it's going to show you the previous one in this column. It's not something we edit. This particular field is new. It pertains so far as I know, for just active lifestyles. It's this lot upgrade fee. It was requested as a way for if, for example, it's an extremely large lot and somebody puts a very tiny home on it and we would like to charge them, or we do charge them, an additional fee. In Salesforce, it gets added in as part of the lot premium. It doesn't get called out as a separate field, but we are calling it separately in E1 for accounting and finance purposes. So this is a field that if it applies, which again, it will not apply to everybody, you will know if it applies because I'm pretty sure the active adult team is very familiar with this field. It used to be an option in Salesforce where they would have to add this fee, or somebody would need to add it to the premium, and we've been asked to have it called out separately. So that's where you would enter the upgrade fee if it applies. And then over here on the right-hand side is where you enter your sales release date. So if this is my phase right here, and I'm going to pretend these were blank, I want to release these particular homes on the 20th. Once I enter those and I go up and hit the save button, what these dates are going to tell Salesforce is it will create a sales phase based on these which have the same date. So when it transfers over to Salesforce, it's going to say that lot 165, 66, and 67 are a part of the same phase, and it's the sales phase. Obviously, the construction phase is different. Once you've made all the updates that you want to make to this particular screen, and I didn't mention, I apologize, if you do use the construction phases to assist with your pricing, again, you can enter that up here. If I know that I only want to work on construction phase 1, I can shorten my list to only pull in those lots that pertain to construction phase 1 or 2, depending on what I'm working on. Up here in the top left, again, I have to make sure I hit OK to save my changes. Once I've saved my changes, you'll notice it reverts me back into this Work with Lot Master screen. If I needed to do a different community, I could come up here and I picked one that doesn't apply. I'm making up numbers, so I apologize. There we go. So I could go into my next community, and again, just remember that we do need to come up and do the lot maintenance, but it will want you to select some lots to work on. One of the key things to remember in this is please remember to update your pricing grid, because it will be a disaster to see multiple fields. And again, we've pulled these up. You do have, this is not the only view you'll ever need. If you also wanted some other view that's available to you, you can change it back and forth. But when you do your pricing, this will make it a lot easier. All right, so now the question is, how does all of this look when it makes its way over to Salesforce? So after I've made all of these changes, now I'm going to need to go into Salesforce and validate a lot of what I've done. So depending on, I know different people on the call have probably had varying levels of Salesforce training. For the most part, I think everybody being sales managers or escrow that updates the pricing has been through a large majority of the training. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through, this is the search bar and the things that you've probably already seen. If you are somebody that updates pricing and that is really all that you do in Salesforce and you have not seen anything whatsoever to do with navigating through Salesforce, please reach out to me. We do have some videos and other things that I can refer you to on our LMS site, as well as just videos that I can provide from designer training and things like that that will help you walk through, how to navigate Salesforce. But what I would recommend, we will have under the reports section the similar reports that you have under JF Shea reports today. So the I believe the inventory report is one of the ones that a lot of people use to validate the pricing that they have just put into the system. All of those are still going to exist under reports. They're not in here as of right now because this is the production environment and I haven't updated everything yet. But I do want to show you that there's a couple other ways that I would recommend, and it's completely up to you. But for example, in the product section, which is your lots, I've created one in here that is called Plan Pricing Confirmation. I used this during testing. It's basically just a list that shows you these are the products at this community with the elevation. This is the current price and the elevation price. It will also pull in the last changed price and put the plan price in twice. So this was just what I used to validate during testing, and you can create any type of list view like this for yourself if you prefer to use this over an existing report. It's entirely up to you. But when I'm in this, it makes it easy because over here on my filters, I can say, okay, now I want to try a different community, and I can pull up now I can validate the pricing on this particular community. And you'll see this one, at least I found one that had an example of an elevation price. Some of the divisions and communities may not ever have elevation prices if you don't have an elevation premium. If you do, obviously these will appear here. So this takes care of your plan pricing and your elevation pricing. If you are looking for lot pricing, then you would create something very similar to this for lot pricing confirmation. Because lots, plans, elevations, and objects are all considered products. So I will probably go ahead and create one for plan pricing and one for lot pricing, and I'll leave them in there as default. If nobody uses them, then I'll go ahead and remove them. But just so you have them in there in case they're helpful, it only adds 2 more to the list, and we don't have a lot. We have available, future release, and a few other ones. There is a document I have out there about how to clone and modify list views. So if this was almost what you needed, but you wanted a couple different columns on here, everybody in the company will have the ability. You will not be able to edit the one that I put in there as the default, but you will be able to clone. And once you clone it, you can name it for yourself, and you can put exactly what columns you would like, and you can change it to only the communities you're interested in or the division, and that will be your report or your list view that you can then use going forward. We do have the plan. Go ahead.
Sorry, I have a question. So when you go back to this report, if you have a price effective date on there, are you still going to see what you just entered, or are you not going to see this until the effective date?
On this particular one, because of the field that I used, you won't see it until it's effective. But we can put on there a pricing effective date, because that way you'd be able to see your changes going forward. I just need to make absolutely certain in the feeds of information that's going over that the data is being sent ahead of time, or if the data is not being sent until the effective date.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so other than that, what I was about to say and I forgot to mention is that we are going to be providing custom list view training. Some of you have already heard this if you've been on 95 of my other calls, but within about 30 to 45 days after go live, we will do more training on how to make these list views and customize them. They are going to become some of your best friends, and you will be able to modify them, create them to work for you, and I think it's going to be very valuable. But from day one, we first need to focus on just getting everybody comfortable in doing the day-to-day activities, generating a contract, some of the things that are key business functions, and then once we're kind of more comfortable in navigating and what are our objects and what are our fields that we have available, and what are the differences between custom list views and reports and different things like that. So we will revisit a lot of that. One of the nice things about list views is, for example, anything that is blue is a hyperlink that will take you directly into that information. So if I wanted to, for some reason, look in more detail at this particular plan, when I click on that plan, it's going to open it up, and now I can see, this is my price, this is my elevation, these are some of my features. Not that that would ever pertain while you're updating a price, but just something to keep in mind when it comes to these list views. The other thing to mention, if you weren't already aware, is if you do have one of these and pricing is something that is high on your list, if this is a list view that I use frequently and I don't want to have to keep going through this route to find it, I can use my favorites button up here. I can add it to my favorites. And now every time that I go in and I need to do my plan pricing, I can just click on this link right here and it's going to take me straight in without having to navigate through the products and then select my list.
Amy, it's Lisa. Can I ask a quick question on the E1 side? There are no approvals, right? So once you update your pricing and put in your effective date, it's just going to go effective on that date, correct?
Correct. Yes. So the approvals, I know that there was one or two divisions that did use the approvals correctly in the existing Salesforce. So we are going to work on something for that, because I do know that some people had gone back to the Excel spreadsheets and others had done the complete paperless route. And we don't want to move anybody backwards in time. But with E1 right now, there is no approval process. However, we will be looking, because right now the EPO system does have a approval process. So I'm hoping that we can use some of what they've already built in that logic and mimic it so that we can have somewhat of an approval process in here, because I think that would make it a lot more useful.
Sounds good. Yeah, it's more of an audit thing than a we need it thing.
Right. And so right now divisions have, they have to take the spreadsheet, make sure it's signed, load a copy of it in to make sure that we have the valid and approvals and all that. So I do understand the value of it, and hopefully we can get it back in there. Some are using DocuSign in the meantime to send it and have the, whoever is the approver, the division president, the VP, whoever is that individual, sign off on it through DocuSign rather than having to have that piece of paper. But again, that's still not obviously as ideal as just having it directly in the system so that the auditors can look and go, oh yeah, that's signed off on, we're good.
Yeah, that's good. Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Amy, I have a question.
Okay.
So for price revisions in E1, are we still going to be able to do that in E1?
Price revisions in E1.
Right now we're doing it in Salesforce, but since everything is done in E1 now, where would we apply the incentive for, let's say, pre-plots?
She's asking when we do price revisions, we will provide.
For price revisions.
Yeah, price revision is either off the base of the house or off incentive.
Well, so the incentives are still done in Salesforce. So if it's an incentive, if it's any type of a home price or options incentive, that's still going to be done in Salesforce. Those are still handled within Salesforce. If you were adjusting only the base price, the elevation premium or the lot premium, you would do that in E1.
Okay.
But on those price revisions, you would go into Salesforce. You'll normally have your generic price incentives in there that you can apply. So if it's a $10,000 Shane mortgage, that will already be there. But if it's a lot specific because you're reducing this specific home by $20,000, you would just add that incentive straight into that lot.
Okay.
So same as you would do it in the other system, but it would be now in the new system.
So in the list view, will there be a column to show all the pre-plots?
So those would be, yes, those are under they're called spec homes.
So so that's under product instead of plan spec confirmation.
I don't have one in here right now, but
Okay.
there will be the spec log. Spec is basically spec, inventory, designer. I think there's been a couple other names that I've heard out there, but they're all very similar, basically meaning a home that you have released for sale, you do not have a buyer, and you may be adding options to it or anything like that. That's the defined spec home. I think spec and inventory are the two most common. But
Will we see the options pricing in E1?
the options pricing, you mean the total options that are applied, or?
Yeah. Will we see that in E1?
I think you can see that in E1. I mean, that's nothing that is.
You would have to go to that specific lot, more than likely, right? Just how they close out.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something you would update because you don't update or do anything like that today.
Yeah, that's located in the sales file like it is today, team. So, you got your options, all the options that are on the lot, but if that's what you're asking. But it's the same as it has it, how it's always been.
We won't see that in E1 if there's already options on a lot when we're pricing it. That was my question, I guess. We'd have to go to Salesforce to see.
Yeah, unless that's a common, I'd have to double check because I'm not as familiar with E1, but if there is a field on the lot master that does show the total options selected for that lot, which I don't believe there is, but if there is, we can add that column to this pricing grid.
Okay. And then Amy, can you also touch on how do we release a lot for sale? Is that done in E1 or is that done in Salesforce?
Yes, so that's done on the lot master and that's in the sales release date. So when I was in here,
So it's just a date. We don't have to say like available or anything. It's just based on that date only.
correct. So the sales release date that you enter, that's when it's going to be as soon as the system says once we are at that date or beyond, it will update and switch the status to available.
Okay. And then do we assign it to a phase? Like how do we do a sales phase?
So that when you are in the lot maintenance screen, it does it based upon the date. So when you're in this screen, everything that I enter with the same date is going to be assigned to the same phase.
Okay. And it just numbers it automatically?
Yeah, it doesn't use the same numbers like 1A. It puts in the date, the sales release date, and calls that the phase.
So if you are releasing a new parcel, we typically would send a spreadsheet in and someone would upload the lots in a future parcel for us, and then we could go in and do things to them. Do we have to upload the parcels, or is that still being done at central services?
I am going to have to table that because I don't know anything about parcels.
Okay.
I apologize.
You're talking about creating the actual home as an available home for you to select?
We sell parcels, particularly at two communities, Summerlin and Vistancia. So parcel C48 is the next release of lots. I usually would send in a spreadsheet to my project accountant with the lot numbers and the cost center and the premiums, and somebody would upload them into Salesforce. I don't know who was doing that. Is that still?
I think we're talking about the loading. I think we're talking about the loading to CMS that gets them into E1. That process should still be the same.
Correct.
Okay, great.
Thank you, whoever that was.
Yeah. So I had another question. If we want to take a lot off the market, do we just delete the date? What's the process for taking a lot off the market if for some reason we need to?
Let me determine. I know you could do it in Salesforce by like an admin role will have the ability to change the status. but I want to double check and see if we need to do anything in E1 first, so that if we need to delete that sales release date, so that you have the ability to put it back in again later on.
Okay. Thank you.
Can we go back to the RSV law upgrade?
Yeah, this right here?
Yep. We are one of the communities that do that. And I think I got myself confused because it is selected as an option with a price tag attached to it. If we're adding it in E1 here, do they still have to select that option?
No. So, and this may be something where I need to have somebody from the Active Lifestyles review this with your team in detail. This is something that was requested more on the finance side of things. For accounting and finance purposes, they wanted to have this called out as not an option any longer, but as part of the lot premium. So we had to add this particular field that is brand new, and they will no longer have any options that are selected. So the difference is, and this was something that they were, the team was okay with, somebody will have to, that has rights to update pricing. Once it is determined that, let's say lot 1, they are going to be charged a $15,000 upgrade fee, it's not going to be them selecting an option any longer. It's going to be somebody with rights coming in and updating this particular field. And when they do that, it will automatically add the additional amount to the lot premium in Salesforce. So there will no longer be an option that looks like a lot premium fee.
Okay. That's what I needed to know. Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that scenario is happening in real time. And so how quickly do the two systems update? So if we were to go in and change the RSV lot premium to add that increased premium, is that then transferred to Salesforce right away, or does it take a day to upload?
No, as soon as you hit save, it will send an outbound feed into Salesforce. It may take 2 to 3 minutes, but by no means is it a day or anything like that. It's not a time lag. It's just however long it takes to kind of feed to the system.
Great. Thank you.
All right. If there are no other questions right now, I will let you guys get back. But please, I encourage you to, just take a quick look, jump into the PY environment and kind of see. If you come up with any other questions, just let me know. Or if you have questions now, but you think they might be specific to just your community or just your division, feel free to just shoot an email and let me know. And again, I will post this meeting up on the LMS, and I'll also send it out to the sales managers so they have it as well for anybody that may have missed or anybody that wants to refresh in case you don't have any pricing updates for the next month or so. One last thing I want to mention, just because I'm sure some of you have already heard this, some of you may have not, but I'm saying it on every training I do so I can catch as many people as possible. On August 21st, which is the day prior to go live, you will not have access to either Salesforce system. So we will be, when you go live on the 22nd, it'll be S2 version, but on the 21st, we are shutting down both systems to accommodate a lot of migrating of data from one system to the other and making sure that we have chances to validate and not have people continuing to make changes while we're trying to get the latest and greatest. So that being said, if you have certain things that if you're more comfortable doing your pricing updates in Salesforce and you want to get them all done on Monday for the following, releases you might have on Saturday, I would recommend doing that prior to the 21st. And then that way, when you go live, you're not stressed about having to get the new process up and running and make sure you have it done before Saturday. So just kind of a heads up. And then if there's anything that occurs on the 21st that was a drastic issue, obviously we have backup plans on how to handle all of that. But just want to give everybody a heads up because I'm trying to let as many people know as possible just in case you didn't hear it from somebody else. All right. Well, thank you guys very much for jumping on, and I will be available if you have any questions after this.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you, Amy.
Thanks, Amy. Bye-bye.
Thank you.